Canadian-developed quantitative algorithms have demonstrated over 31 years of stock market backtesting that the efficient market hypothesis, EMH, meaning that the stock market is unpredictable, is incorrect, and the markets are predictable to a much greater degree than anyone would expect. In early 2023, the average annual gain on each one of the 286 stocks backtested under two algorithms, simply called A and B, was 38.24%, which, if it was a large hedge fund, over $150 million under management, would place it as the fourth best of 2022, and that's just the average gain of all 286 stocks. In September 2023, refinement of the algorithms resulted in two new algorithms, known as C and D. A few more stocks were added to the testing, bringing the total to 292. There are up to 40% fewer trades required for C and D versus A and B, and the average annualized return for all 292 with algorithm C was 58.99%, 22.45% better than A, and algorithm D was 58.3%, 14.75% better than B. None of the trades are compounded. They are straight long and short trades. Brokerage fees and taxes are not considered in this backtesting. To run both C and D with one stock going back a maximum of 31.5 years requires 8.2 million formulas. The developer of these algorithms is a Canadian, Guy Kramer, who has 43 patents to his name, with 40 of them in the field of physics, including a patented light-bending invisibility material. Guy is no stranger to patterns and pattern recognition, developing over 14,000 camouflage patterns since 2002, utilizing fractal geometry to improve camouflage effectiveness. Fractals are geometric shapes found in nature that repeat with a change in scale. Guy has worked with over 50 countries on their camouflage patterns, and over 7 million military-issued uniforms use his hyperstealth camouflage. He also developed all the W.L. Gore and Associates hunting camouflage, known as Gore Optifade, and the European Harkala Axis MSP and Sealand Invis hunting patterns. So why did Guy believe that the stock markets might be predictable? Guy was the research assistant to his grandfather, Donald Hings, the inventor of the walkie-talkie just prior to World War II, and the inventor of 56 patents, receiving the Order of Canada in 2001. Guy was Hings' research assistant for 6 years from 1986 to 1991, and while Hings was not involved in hyperstealth or the invisibility material, Guy attributes this mentoring period with his grandfather to his ability to innovate. Hings had developed proprietary geophysics instrumentation which was very sensitive and required periodic recalibration. Guy moved on in 1991 and wondered if there were patterns in these signals and if recalibration times matched other patterns. In 1993, he had developed his first quantitative algorithm that initially corresponded to individual athletic performance. He was able to accurately predict how specific sports players would do based off of previous games and matches. He brought this to the attention of the National Hockey League and accurately predicted player performance on 4 separate games for the Edmonton Oilers general manager, Glenn Sather. Guy could not predict the winner of the game, but could show which group of players on either team would be better or worse than normal, noting that 75% of the players would fall into one category and 25% would fall into the other. Guy began to wonder if 75% of people were reacting the same way to his geophysics model, there might be larger-scale correlations such as the stock market. In 1999, Guy was able to demonstrate this correlation, but it only lasted a few years as computer trading began to become predominant, thereby negating the human trading influence. Kramer points out that it wasn't a sudden shift, but it happened gradually over the years as computer trading became more commonplace than human trading in the markets. He abandoned the algorithm in 2005. In 2022, while meeting with a sovereign wealth fund in the Middle East about hyperstealth, Guy brought up this previous algorithm, which is not part of hyperstealth. When they asked if it was still in use, he responded that he really had not looked at it in about 15 years. They wondered if it might correlate to highly volatile cryptocurrency trading, which did not exist when Guy abandoned the algorithm. When Guy arrived back from the trip, he decided to backtest cryptocurrencies, and it did not work, but there seemed to be a faint correlation underlying the results. Revising everything about the algorithm based off his decades of experience, he came up with 2 new algorithmic formulas that ended up as algorithm A and algorithm B, both of which demonstrated a correlation to not only cryptocurrencies, but also the stock market in general. It is not a super strong correlation, but it gave enough of an advantage to either predict upwards movement, these are long orders, or downwards movement, known as short orders, better than other trading systems. While the 2.3 billion equations needed to review all 292 stocks for algorithms C and D took Guy many months to run, he says he can only imagine what improvements can be made with AI once these algorithms are analyzed. The work will no longer take months, but minutes. He avoided using AI to protect the algorithms from potential dissemination to the companies that host the AI. A sovereign wealth fund would have the resources to use internal AI dedicated to just these equations with minimal risk to discovery by outside sources. 86 years after the beginning of Canadian involvement in World War II, the country is now in a different type of war. The outcome is just as important to Canada as their sovereignty is on the line as it was in World War II, as Donald Trump has said he wants to annex Canada through economic means, using tariffs to weaken the Canadian economy. Guy says he will offer these algorithms to the Canadian government with two stipulations: that he receive adequate compensation before the algorithm is signed over, and if, and when, the algorithms are disclosed, he receive credit for their discoveries. These are lessons his grandfather instilled in him based off his own experiences. There would be provisions that the compensation would be dependent that the Canadian government could verify the algorithms before any payment was made to him. Utilizing it in a Canadian government-controlled sovereign wealth fund could alter the trade war between the US and Canada to allow Canada to not only overcome any economic impact from a trade war, but it also has the potential to provide for increased defense spending and help pay off Canada's $1.255 trillion deficit. Guy concludes with the following statement: "I am not a money manager, nor do I want this to take up a large part of my life, as I have many other things to put my efforts into that I find more interesting. I do want to do my part to defend my country, and handing this over should provide tools that not only would provide Canada an upper hand in all future trade negotiations, but it could also accomplish so much more to reduce or eliminate the deficit for all Canadians, to increase our defense spending, and potentially provide dividend payments to all Canadian citizens." Guy uses the analogy that these four stock trading algorithms are like holding a royal flush if Canada is involved in a trade war with any other country or countries. If he's right, Canada might just hold all the cards.